Well, greetings. This is Belani Lay Patterson, your wellness educator and founder of Women Healing Globally and the creator of Balanced Cosmic Living Framework. So today, and hope everyone is well, happy Wednesday, I believe it is. Today we're going to be talking about the financial elephant in the room. Oh my goodness, money, currency, moolah, dinero. But not just about money itself. I want to kind of explore the financial shame. Right? The survival techniques we use, the power moves, the dignity, and all of the emotional weight that so many of us quietly carry, right? We quietly carry that shame. Have you ever been in a position where someone helped you financially? But somehow it didn't fully feel like it was help, or it was like tied to something, or it was like some hidden going on in the background that you were really unaware of. And maybe it wasn't, it started out like looking like it was help, but nothing was said directly, right? But you could feel it, right? I'm all about energy. I'm all about, really, feeling the energy behind the people, right? Behind the smiles, behind the if it's sincere or genuine, right? And so that shift in the energy, that subtle reminder that you feel, the emotional pressure behind the interaction, and then suddenly you're not just someone who owes money. You feel like you owe them a piece of your dignity, might I add, right? A little piece of your dignity. Think on that for a minute, if you've ever felt that, right? You see plenty of movies where people, it could be, they always say it's the principle, right? But actually, I'm starting to think it's not really just about the principle. It's about you being able to have a little bit of control over that person. That's what I would think. But let's talk about this honestly. Money is actually different from any other form when it comes to giving, right? Might I add. You can give love, you can give time, you can give encouragement, you can give support. I mean, it can show up in all type of ways, but when it comes to money, moolah, that Benjamin, that is then and only then where money then becomes a thing where it's measured, it's tracked, it's expected back. And because money often comes with or carries kind of like this unsaid emotional power, I believe. Emotional power. Let's expand deeper into that. Now, sometimes, whether people admit it or not, money becomes tied to shame. I've experienced it myself. It could be debt shame, survival shame, career shame, starting over shame, aging shame, instability shame, irresponsibility shame. Oh my gosh. I mean, many people, I think we all silently have felt like that a time or two. And I'm not saying everybody, right? Have felt like they should be further along in their life. And when you already feel kind of vulnerable financially, with yourself, you having those discussions with yourself at night, like, dang, I should have this and whatever. And even normal interactions start to feel a bit heavy. But there are also real situations where money becomes a tool of control. We were talking about that earlier, where someone helps you, but it's really kind of attached to these silent expectations, right? Where support slowly turns into leverage of some sort, right? Especially when it comes to romantic relationships, right? Where if I'm helping you begins to feel like I now have power over you, then do you have to question whether it's love or not? Is it authentic? Right? Is your help coming with strings or attachments? But these are personal reflections I want you to really start thinking about, right? Particularly as women, we've always had to feel like we've had to perform for men, and when it comes to money, right? And I've experienced this personally myself. I was once engaged to someone recently who was, he started out, he was very financially generous with me during a time when I was really kind of rebuilding my life, right? Raised my kids in Minnesota. They're all grown and gone. Came to, relocated to another state, started myself, and it was a small rural town. So I wasn't really used to having to struggle as I did because there are the limited jobs and things like that. I was on my way to Africa, but everything kind of got detoured because I, thought I had fell in love and got with this dude, right? And what started as help began to feel more like transactional, where there was an agreement that was presented, a contract about the money. Expectations even over financial conversations and contracts that kind of changed the emotional dynamic between us. And I remember kind of feeling like confused because it was the first time I ever had encountered that in a relationship, let alone I was engaged to this person, right? Not because I didn't believe in accountability, but debt is real, responsibility is real, but shame should never be the enforcement, right? It should never be the enforcement. So it shouldn't. So as I began to, bring these things to the attention of that person, they would be very cold and dismissive. Well, don't ask me for my money then no more. It won't be no problem. Simple, right? Don't ask me for help. Because then I started actually feeling shame or this underlying I've got to prove that he's not gonna, doesn't think I'm trying to take advantage of him, blah, blah, blah. But it didn't matter. He already had up in his mind. And then he later used that as leverage, as control. And I'm no longer in the relationship. But that's okay. I'm healing through that. I mean, it really does tether to your sense of worth, right? I understand that how I deal with a compassionate truth. And the reality is many people are struggling quietly right now, right? Some people look successful and are barely holding themselves together emotionally. This is real talk. I mean, sometimes people are living from one paycheck to paycheck. The world as we know it is changing right before our eyes. And sometimes we're a paycheck from losing everything. Some people are rebuilding after divorce, after loss, health issues, burnout, job instability, or even some sort of emotional collapse. And we sometimes carry the shame simply because we needed help. So when it comes to you either giving money or being the receiver of money, I would ask you to ask yourself, how are we showing up? How are we showing up in our receiving, and how are we showing up in our giving? Does it make us feel like, does giving feed our ego or fuel our spirit? Right? Does receiving fuel you to feel shame or empowered? So that's the things that I want you to ask, right? You don't have to look broken to feel the pain, for the pain to matter, right? Because many people are silently suffering, while still trying to appear like they're okay publicly, right? Lord knows if you were to ask somebody for help, geez. So here's the shift. This is the shift I want people to, and this is for me too. I always say, if you give money, be clear. if it's a gift or it's a loan. If it's a loan, set the terms with integrity. But do not attach control. Do not use it later on down the line to make it where you're, you know, having some type of dangling carrot over someone to keep them bound and feel shame, you know. Let them keep their pride. It's okay. And if it's a gift, just release it fully. That's okay too. And I think now I have the mindset that, you know, and even with my now adult children, we roll different. Like if we give each other money, you know, we don't be like, hey, you owe me money. We just don't. I didn't raise my kids that way. But when we have it, we got each other's back. And that's just what it is. And that's how it's been for years. If we got it, we know to help each other out. You call me, my son, or my children, or whatever, and we just give it. We don't call weeks later, every week, talking about something. Hey, you got that money? Got that money? And it somehow it releases us from feeling the feelings of shame and inadequacy. Because we love each other enough and trust each other enough to know that I know that if I got it, they got it, right? If you got it, I got it. That's the principle I go on. I can't say that for everybody else, and I'm not judging anyone else, but that's just because I felt money shame all my life, you know, that I wanted to teach my children that y'all relationship is not contingent on the closeness of how much money you give each other, right? I see how people with whose parents pass on and the children or the adult children are arguing over their things, right? You know, no, we're not going to be doing that with me. You know, whatever I leave you, and I try to give them of equal proportion. But it is not about you waiting for me to die so that you can get a one-up financially. That to me is a toxic trait when it comes to particularly African American families, right? And European families are all families, right? But I'm just saying, we lose what our ancestors or our family members have had so long to, put in so much investment to keep. That house that Big Mama had that, hey, Big Mama had that, but we can't even pay the taxes on it, right? So yeah, it's responsibility on both sides. The responsibility of thinking about money in a scarcity way, or currency in a scarcity. So greetings back again, and this is the closure of the closing of the video about the financial elephant in the room. My apologies. I'm learning this technology like everybody else. But in closing, where I had left off on the previous video or audio was about the scarcity mindset that we have had, right? Over wealth and the transferring of wealth onto our lineage, onto our family members, etc. And one of the questions that I wanted to really pose, if I had already mentioned this in the earlier segment of the video, again, my apologies. But I believe that this topic of discussion, when we talk about financial elephant in the room, is of high importance, because this is where a lot of shame and guilt and inadequacy are tied to us, unbeknownst to us, really understanding what the abundance of financial wealth is or the lack of financial wealth is, how it really a lot of time has dictated our patterns, our life, how we move, how we think about things in the world at hand. And so the question is that I want to say, and this is in my closing. So I want to ask the question, does homelessness have a face? Does do people struggling have to look like broken or for their pain to even matter? Because I know that many people that I know that are close to me and myself at some point, because many people are suffering silently when it comes to money and the lack or the abundance of it, while still trying to appear like they're okay publicly, right? It's a lot if you don't have it. The fact that you have to humble yourself to even be to a place where you have to ask people when you actually don't look the part. What does looking the part mean? Does it mean that we only see people out on the street that are homeless in the same clothes, or riding around with carts and is that what homelessness is? That the face of homelessness? No, it's not in my opinion. Because you could be homeless. Homelessness is not just a physical attribute that we see, but it's also a homelessness in your heart. That you don't have connection to source or to the most high or to Christ or Christ consciousness, that you don't have a relationship to self to really understand or understand, because I don't like understand, that this too shall pass. And that this is just a lesson for us to learn about ourselves when it comes to these relationships to the 9 dimensions that I speak of. And today we're speaking on financial dimension, right? All of these dimensions at some point we experience in life. Some are mastered, some need work on, some need tweaking, some, you're good. But we all need to address all of the whole parts of us which are in the 9 dimensions. But let me not get sidetracked. So this is the shift. So if you give money, remember I was saying, if I repeated this, it's just okay. It's in my closing. If you give money, be clear. If it's a gift or it's a loan, set the terms with integrity and try not to attach control to it, right? Or leverage. And if it's a gift, just release it fully. And if you are receiving, be accountable. Don't just, do not internalize it as shame upon yourself because you've had to ask for help, right? Because that is pride. It really is. And I understand we all have pride. There's, I guess, maybe healthy pride or whatever, but nothing that brings you to have to feel less than someone. That's not good, right? Now, if you're feeling like, hey, I want to be integrable and I want to make sure that I get back what someone gave me or pass it forward, as they say, to someone, then yeah, that's kind of healthy. But even that has to be in its proper place. You can't, guilt until you get there to be able to be in a position to, pay back people who've helped you over the years. There's nothing more you can do. But keep going towards your goal, and where you will be in the position to then pay it forward to someone else or to them, right? Because your financial position really does not define your value as a human being. That's my humble opinion. And even though society often teaches us quietly and indirectly that money or the lack of it somehow determines our worth, I beg to differ. Our worth is not existed before your circumstances. And it still exists while you are rebuilding. And your worth existed before your circumstances. I just want to make that clear. And it is still exists while you are rebuilding. I had to repeat that again. So again, this is Balanced Cosmic Living. This is part of the financial dimension of balanced cosmic living. And because financial wellness is not just about numbers, it's about your relationship to money, your dignity, your emotional health, your nervous system, and how power moves through your life. If this message resonated with you, I invite you to reflect. And where in your life has money become tied to shame or used as a leverage or power, right? How can you begin separating your worth from your circumstances? And I thank you for being here with me today. I'm available for speaking engagements, wellness workshops, coaching sessions, and the 9 dimensions facilitation and training. Because healing is not just one dimensional, and neither are you. Peace, healing, and love. Until next time, this is episode 4 on Financial Elephant in the Room.